Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd first of all like to introduce myself. My name is Councillor Gill Slocombe. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Portfolio for Sedgemoor District Council, and I also sit on the Somerset Safer Partnership. I would really extend a welcome to you and thank you so much for coming tonight. I'd like to thank our police and Crime Commissioner Sue Mountstevens, our Chief Inspector Lisa Simpson, trying not to get this wrong, sorry, our Assistant Chief Constable Steve Cullen, and have I missed anyone? And all the important people there that are the organisers, so thank you very much. I would like to acknowledge tonight the commitment and the collaborative working to ensure the safety of our residents. By talking about the collaborative working, I mean not only working with the police, but working alongside the police with our district council. And we do an awful lot of work with the police. We do our Sedgemoor CCTV, which is invaluable, our radio link, and that deals with all the antisocial behaviour with the hotline. We have regular monthly meetings, which are very important to obviously keep abreast of what's going on. And most of all, we have our Sedgemoor Together teams, and many of you have probably heard about these. The results from the Together team approach shows the collaborative working is cost effective and brings together expertise and knowledge of the benefits of residents. The Together team is led by our very own Christy Blackwell, is in the room now. She's a marvellous community safety manager who does a brilliant job. The Together team started in East Bridgwater some 3 years ago. It's a multi-agency partnership tackling social and economic deprivation and encouraging community pride. The Together team at East Bridgwater recently featured in an international conference in Canada and showed the operating model, which was hailed as excellent. And Christy and a couple of people I think went with her. So that was an amazing thing to do, amazing feat. Since its official launch, the team has had real success, with 31 other partner agencies signed up to deliver the services offered by the umbrella agencies of the Together team. East Bridgwater is the one-stop shop of support. The team work in the community to meet the needs of individuals and families working with residents to reduce crime, antisocial behaviour and financial hardship, whilst improving quality of life and access to work and opportunities, and giving aspirations to many people who otherwise wouldn't have them. So far, over 440 cases have been helped. 192 community events have been held from all the community hub at Parkway Sydenham. More crucially, 26 volunteers have been recruited from the community to help with community activities. The model has been so successful that it's been replicated in South Bridgwater, Burnham-on-Sea and Highbridge. And this is just a small part from Sedgemoor District Council, the team there, excuse me, that work alongside the police. We're a team and we have to work together. The police do a marvellous job, and we all know resources are always a problem. But by this collaborative working and by us being together, we can make an even better way together. And I think that I would like to thank you so much for tonight. And I hope everyone enjoys it and you take part in the questions and answers, which I'm sure you've got plenty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out on such a miserable evening. Why do we have these meetings? Well, one of the things that local people have told me is that they sometimes have contact with maybe their local beat managers, maybe their local PCSOs, but they very rarely see the whole thing from a strategic point of view. So that is why I have these meetings on a regular basis going across the area, where I explain a bit about my role and about the priorities, where we have a senior officer, and we're delighted that Steve Cullen, Assistant Chief Constable, is here to be able to talk about the operational part, and then very much about some of the local information, that local challenges that no doubt are facing Lisa, but it's also important that you have questions that you will raise as far as local issues are, that she will be able to address. And if they're really difficult, you've got your team here as well, so they can answer those. So I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner. I was elected in 2012. I'm an independent Police and Crime Commissioner, which means I have no affiliation with any political party. Now, forgive those councillors in the room, but I think policing is a really complex business, and I do not believe that there should be any party politics involved with the governance of the policing. So I stood in 2012, which is the first time I stood for anything. I was a magistrate, I ran a bakery business, I was also the vice chair of the monitoring board at Bristol Prison. So I stood in 2012 and I was elected, and I stood again in 2016. In fact, I was in this very room doing a husting the last time I was here. And I was re-elected again, and there will be a further election every 4 years, so that the next election will be 2020. Why do I think the role of Police and Crime Commissioners is important? Is because you have no governance or no control over who runs your fire, who runs your ambulance, who runs your local hospitals, etc. Whereas with the police, being part of the openness and transparency that I have constantly encouraged the force to do so, is if you don't like the priorities I'm working, what I'm doing, then you don't vote for me. You don't have that over any of the other agencies. So I think that's one of the good things about having a police and crime commissioner, that you can get rid of me. So, on that cheerful note, I'm delighted that some people have sent in questions, and if we have, we will go through the questions and answers at the end. But I'm very happy that if we run out of time, and if you give questions to my team, then we'll be able to come back to you on that. So I want to talk about what we're doing in Avon and Somerset, and my role as your elected Police and Crime Commissioner. So my vision is very clear, that the constabulary, Avon and Somerset Constabulary, belong to you. They do not belong to me, they do not belong to the Chief Constable, they do not belong to Theresa May, but they belong to you, which is why I'm here today, to be able to listen to some of your questions. So I want local people to have confidence in their local police. I want to be your voice in policing, so I will learn a lot more from the questions that you give me about where you think we can do better. We all want to make our communities safe, and we all want to feel safe. That is a bit of a given, because we all want that. And working very much with local authorities and with all the other agencies, it is our job to make you feel as safe as we possibly can. So, I'm the bridge between local people and the police, so I go out, I spend a lot of time listening to what you've got to say. I hold the Chief Constable to account, and I'm here to make us as strong a community as possible. One of my statutory roles is to produce a police and crime plan, and it's our statutory role that we have to do one for the whole of Avon and Somerset. But what was very clear, and has been clear over the last few years, is that actually it's much more important to work with our partners, and therefore we now have a Somerset plan where we are working with Somerset County Council and our districts to be able to work together. We're all on ever decreasing budgets, and therefore it's important that we use our money wisely, we use our resources wisely, in order to work together to, as I say, to make our community stronger. So I went out to consultation on the police and crime plan and in 2016, and we worked through that. We had support on 4 priorities. The first, to protect the most vulnerable from harm. The second, to strengthen and improving local policing teams. The third, to make sure that the constabulary have got the right kit, the right culture and the right people. And then the fourth, to work together with all our other stakeholders, all the local authorities, the districts, but also with the voluntary sector and with fire and ambulance. So it is important that we see that we are partners, not that the police always lead. It depends on who's the best to lead. But what's important is that we share our data, we share our information, and we get the right people to tackle some of the problems. If you're interested in looking on the website, the Police and Crime Plan website, it shows you in real time how the constabulary are performing against it. We also have this particular, I think you have copies of the local Police and Crime Plan, and if you don't, then we can always send it to you if you don't want to take a hard copy. we can send it to you if you contact one of my team. And that just shows you what the priorities are. But let's just talk about, because you might rightly say, what the heck is a police and crime commissioner choosing the priorities for the police? I'm not a police officer. And the police are full of real can-do people. You'll hear, particularly from Steve and Lisa, about some of the things, and they like to do everything. To join the police, they come in because they're wanting to make a difference. But we have limited resources. We cannot do everything. And therefore, that is why a police and crime commissioner goes out to consultation and works on the priorities. And the first priority is very much protecting the most vulnerable from harm. And if we just think about that for a moment, if with limited resources, what's the most important thing that we can do? And it's protecting those who are vulnerable, because the bad guys will be able to hit on those vulnerable people. And that vulnerability can mean a whole different things to different people. It can mean those who are being domestically abused. It can mean particularly those who are mentally ill. You're probably aware that nearly 40% of police work is now dealt with those who are mentally ill. And we've invested in looking at making sure that we don't take those who are mentally ill back into police cells. Because if you think about it, that police cells, if you're having a psychotic episode and you're running down the A38 and maybe threatening self-harm, what do we honestly believe that picking them up and putting them in a police cell is the right thing for them? It's going to increase their psychosis, it's going to increase their anxiety. So since 2016, as a force, I've supported the constabulary in making sure that, except in exceptional circumstances, we do not use them for police cells. We take them to a health-based place of safety. And we've also invested in mental health nurses working in the call centre, where they've been able to divert and help thousands of people since we introduced that. So it is a really important part of protecting those most vulnerable. If I look at some of the work that we've also done, if you look at cybercrime, now you are more likely to be a victim of cybercrime than any other crime put together. And what's really important is what we can do. Now, we have to understand that I've just spotted down the corner of my eye, they're dancing over there. It's obvious strictly. No, sorry. Sorry, I was diverted. That it's action, when you are a victim of cybercrime, it is now very unusual that your perpetrator is actually living in our area. The chances of them living in the UK is quite remote. The chances of them living in Europe, immediate Europe, in parts of Europe, is remote. The chances are they're in Eastern Europe, they're in Russia, they're in Vietnam, and in far off places. So we have to tackle it on a national scale, so that's why, for those of you who may have been a victim, we ask you to report to Action Fraud. And Action Fraud have something like 40,000 reports of fraud a month across the country. Now, about 35 of those are then sent back to Avon and Somerset Constabulary a week to investigate. So that just shows you the difference between all of us who have probably received phishing emails, phone calls about our best friend being stuck in Nigeria and will we send them 50 quid, and ones that the national can actually target to be able to work with in Avon and Somerset. We also, as far as coming under the vulnerability, is looking at those who are victims of child sexual exploitation. Now, I talk about this, and for some of you, you may not quite understand what I'm talking about. But I want to talk about how we've raised awareness of what it's called CSE, child sexual exploitation. So we've done various campaigns to raise awareness of helping parents and carers seek advice, to supporting national charity protection who are campaigning to tackle indecent images, and I'll talk about that. a bit later of children online. And then working with local support services to give the victims a voice to be able to talk to other victims. It's all very well me talking to someone who may be on the cusp, but how do I talk to a 14, 15-year-old? I don't have that experience. Experience comes as much stronger advice from someone who has already been a victim. One of the things I've been very conscious of, talking to local people, is that they don't really understand grooming. They don't understand what we're talking about CSE. It's a bit like the sort of thing you read in the paper and you think, doesn't happen here, don't have to worry about it. Well, it does happen here. It's happening right here, right now. And I think what I want to do is share with you a very short video which was released by Leicestershire Police. It's called Kayleigh's Love Story. And it's a 15-year-old Cranleigh who thought she had found love. And 15 days later, she discovers she hasn't. So bear with me while we shall show you this.
I'll never forget the first time we met. We clicked right away.
Hi, love.
Hiya, Mum. I could talk to him for hours. It was as if we were old friends. Am I alright to stay at Katie's tomorrow?
Yeah, fine.
Mum and Dad wouldn't understand. They don't know that he's different. He wants to meet for a few drinks. He treats me like an adult. I think he might be the one. I really do. Mum and Dad wouldn't understand though. They don't know that he's different. He wants me to meet his friends, so he must be serious about it.
Oh, get off me! Go away! Help me! Help! Help me! Oh, get off! Get off, please! Somebody help me!
I could stay here forever. I really think we love each other. But Mum and Dad wouldn't understand. They don't know that he's different.
don't show this to you to shock you. I show this so that you are better informed, so that you don't think that it happens to other people. Because as a parent and a grandparent, I am very aware that it could happen to any of our families. Now, when my kids were young, I would send them up to their rooms to do their homework. They probably weren't doing their homework, but I knew they were safe. Now, with the fact that all kids now have smartphones, is that you need to be able to talk to them, and for them to feel free to talk to you. And there is a massive amount of work that the police are doing. We have a specific operation called Operation Topaz, which has been working in Bristol and has been so successful, it's now going to be rolled out into Somerset, because working with children who are on the cusp of being groomed and exploited. So I just wanted you to understand, when you read about these things, please be aware about how it is happening in our villages and our towns. Because in just 15 days, she was targeted, groomed, exploited, raped, and murdered. And if we look at the figures, we will, according to the NSPCC, 1 in 7 young people have taken a semi-naked or a naked picture of themselves and put it online. If we look at the experiences of 11 to 16-year-olds, 12% have received unwanted sexual messages, and 8% have received requests to respond to them to a sexual message. Now, these figures are quite terrifying. And there are some there are amazing positive things about the internet, aren't there? I mean, I can look at my watch and I can tell you the results of the India versus Pakistan cricket match. Okay, so obviously not of great interest to many of you, but interest to me. But the point is that it's a fantastic opportunity, but we don't have any control over it. And I think that in 10, 20 years' time, we will look back at this period in time and think, you allowed your children to look at that? You allowed them to take part in this? So I think we are on quite a difficult cusp at the moment of working with social media, the social media giants. But I can tell you that trying to get Facebook to take anything down, the Meta going through a court case now to try to find information, and it will take them months because they have to go to America, and it will have to go through various courts before Facebook will release that information. So it is very difficult to work with them. But we have a responsibility to safeguard our young people, and I hope that you, having seen that film, you understand some of the consequences and have a better understanding. So that's when I talk about protecting the most vulnerable. And just as an aside, I don't know how many of you have a guess about how many people we go missing each year in Avon and Somerset. Does anyone like a guess? 100? 40? 8,000. Okay, that's about 26 to 28 a day. A number of those are very high risk. And if you think about it, 5,000 of those are children. So if your child or grandchild was to go missing, you would want the police to drop everything to look for them. 1,000 of them are who are suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia. And if you can think about it, they've let themselves out through their door, they may be in their pyjamas, their nightie, they've got on a bus, they've got their wallet or their handbag with them. If you're a bad guy, who are you going to sit next to? And then, of course, the group in the middle are all trying to self-harm and seriously trying to commit suicide. So those are some of the things that the police are doing that are not crime-related. You know, looking after the trying to support the mental health, mentally ill, and looking for those missing people. But it's the work that the police have got to do. And I don't know whether you will have heard over the weekend, but the police is now regarded as quite often a service of first resort and not only last resort. Because with so many of the other agencies retracting, particularly at weekends, it is the police who have to pick up and try to remedy the issues. So the second priority is strengthening and improving local policing teams. We have a great local policing team that's based at Bridgwater. And as you know, that we have, and I'll talk about finances at the end, but we have a number of vacancies, which I'm sure will be discussed later on. And we, with the Chief Constable, we are now recruiting 300 officers and additional PCSOs. And that is purely down to your council, the increase in the council tax precept. So you have paid for those extra officers. So we will see that being rolled out. We have 16 graduating on Friday, and you will see that increasing, and I hope that you'll be able to see that very much physically in Bridgwater over the next year to 18 months. Improving local connections as well. We have a Bridgwater Citizens Academy, which is an 8-week programme which lets you, works with you and the constabulary, so that you can actually see all the different aspects. You know, there's some things you see on television, there's some things that we're aware of, but policing is a very complex business, and so we have this academy which we've done in various other parts of the county, where we come in and we explain to you some of the things about what we do on forensics, what we do with firearms, and a whole range of other issues, and it encourages you to work with us as volunteers. One of the things that local people have told me is that it's all very well me saying I want it to be open and transparent, but where is that open and transparency for those of you as local residents? So I've set up a number of panels where people such as yourselves has joined us to look at the way that the police, either we've looked at ways at police complaints, so we have an independent residents panel which look at the way that the police deal with complaints and the lessons learned from it and how that is then fed out. We have a residents panel, a scrutiny of police powers panel, that come in and look at the way that the police use tasers, look at the way they use of force, and scrutinise the body-worn camera footage. So we're all the time, we are opening the doors to local people to come and scrutinise, which is why it feeds back to, it's your police service. That's why I want you to scrutinise. So I have regular drop-in sessions as well. Over the last month I've been in Yeovil, Ilminster, Taunton, Minehead and Watchet speaking to local people. So if you ever hear that I'm sitting in a local supermarket or sitting in a cafe, please come and chat to me. I'm not asking you to buy me a coffee. But it's a way that I can go out and listen to you. I also want to have, and we have things like meetings like this, but we also have community days where I go and meet some of your local charities, some of your local organisations, about finding out what they're doing and how they work with the police. Because all the time I'm trying to improve that connection between the local groups and the police. And if you have any amazing ideas as a group, you can apply for grants of up to £3,000 through the Action Fund, where we will give you the money in order to tackle particularly things that are in the police and crime plan. So if you look at the police and crime plan, you'll be able to see those areas. So we've been able to support local projects such as Western Zoyland Village Hall, which a community centre that deter antisocial behaviour and installing CCTV. We've also been able to work with Key for Life, which is a charity that offers support and advice to ex-offenders and those who are at risk of offending. And that's working with mentors for that charity. But you know far better than me what your local communities need. So you come forward and please apply for those grants. The third priority is making sure that we have the right people, the right kit, the right culture. As you know that all frontline officers and PCSOs now have body-worn cameras. We are rolling out that they will have laptops so that they are not having to keep on coming back to police stations to update their files. They'll be able to do that outside. And when I mean outside, I mean in coffee shops or in libraries, because you tell me you want your police to be as visible as possible. When they're in a police station, they're not visible. So we're giving them the kit, and it's being rolled out over the next few months about how they can stay out and be seen by you. We're also recruiting these 300 officers over this next year. which was again funded by your council tax precept, and we're also trying to make sure that they represent the community. If we look at our community, we have about, in Avon and Somerset, we have about 7% black and minority ethnic communities in our local area, but the Avon and Somerset is only represented by 2.8%. So we need to increase representation from BME, we need to increase representation from LGBT. So there's a whole range of trying to make the communities look, so our police look like our communities. And we hope that by recruiting these 300 people, that we will be able to do that. But we need the confidence of local people, because we police very much on trust. And that trust comes from that you trust and have confidence in the police. Because when we lose that trust and confidence, actually there we will go down the American route and we'll end up having guns. The reason why it works very successfully in this country is because most of us do what the police tell us to do. They don't need to use threat because we have confidence that they are giving us that information. So if they tell us to move, if they tell us that we're not coming down this road, or they tell us that they'd like you to see you in a police station, most of us will do so. In fact, the confidence levels in Avon and Somerset is nearly 80%. So generally speaking, we have a very high confidence level. There'll always be some people who are never going to trust the police because they don't like the police for obvious reasons. But it is important that we have the confidence of most people, which is why when I go to forums such as this, you will tell me that you want to see more local police, that you want to see more PCSOs, and that's what we're using the council tax precept to do. However, just very briefly, I just want to talk about money, a subject very close to my heart. We've had to find £76 million worth of savings over the last few years. We've still got to find another 16 million over the next few years. We have central government grant, which has been flat, and if you think about it with inflation and all the other stuff that goes increasing, we need to find 4 or 5 million just by itself each year. So that is when we have to find additional savings. So the council tax precept is about 38% of our central grant, and this was the first year that we've been given the flexibility to raise it more than 2%. The Minister is considering whether he will allow us to do it again next year, that's why we're going out to consultation. Because if we are allowed to increase it by an additional £1 a month for an average D band household, then what we will do is we will continue to recruit hundreds more officers, and we will be particularly tackling 2 areas that local people tell me that are really important, and that is burglary and that is drugs. So if we increase the council tax precept next year, that is what we will be delivering on. So we are in an organisation that is decreasing. We have lost 655 officers since 2010, and the increase on council tax precept has been allowed us to start to turn on the tap much more rapidly again. But we are still short of money, and we are constantly looking at ways, collaborating with local councils, working with our districts, working with the county council, and working particularly with fire. So we are in talks with fire where we can share some of our buildings, so that we can sell, and we can then reinvest in the front line, because that's what makes a difference to you. So that's a bit depressing note to finish on about how short of money we are. But what we're going to talk about now is Steve is going to talk about a bit more about the operational, and then Lisa will do that. We'll then talk about the local conversations that we've been having, and then we will open for Q&A. So Steve, do you want to take it?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, you hear me at the back? Yeah. Thank you for the invitation today. Real privilege to be here this evening, and I echo what Sue has said about you coming out on this evening, because it it really encourages me that this is obviously a local community that cares about its own community and policing. So I'm very grateful for you coming to hear what we've got to say this evening. I'm also grateful to the local policing team, led by Lisa and Andy, who I know are very, very passionate about serving your local community, and genuinely you're very blessed to have such a strong local policing team who again have taken the time and trouble to come here this evening. So I'm Steve Cullen. I have the privilege of looking after neighbourhood policing, response policing across the whole of Avon and Somerset. I've only been with the force 12 months, so this gives me an ideal opportunity to come out and see local areas and meet local people. Well, I don't have a lot of direct engagement with the public these days, so I actually quite like this in terms of hearing what you've got to say. I'd just like to talk for a few minutes really and hopefully complement and build upon what Sue has said around priority 1 and priority 2 of the police and crime plan. So that's about protecting the most vulnerable and strengthening local policing. So if we talk about protecting the most vulnerable, what I'd like to do is just reflect on how policing has changed since I was a young policey many, many years ago. In many ways, the world was a lot simpler then. But as a PC, my primary job, day in, day out, was dealing with burglary, vehicle crime, and occasionally I'd come across drugs, which usually was around cannabis. There was lots of it, not cannabis, burglary and vehicle crime, and generally we knew what we were doing, we were very good at it, and the majority of my role was crime fighting. Fast forward 25 years on, and building on some of the things Sue has told you, what I ask now our PCs to do is very, very different. Only about 20% of what they deal with is actually crime related. Around 80% is what I would describe as social issues, welfare issues, protecting the most vulnerable. And what that means in reality is that my PCs, my PCSOs, the people that work in the communication centre have a really difficult, complex job to do. Because by the very nature of these things, they're not easily to resolve. By the very nature of these things, we have to work with partners. By the very nature of these things, they're very high risk. So the world in which officers, PCSOs and staff are now operating in is far more complex than the world I was operating in. And that is only going to continue because demand is growing. As Sue touched upon, partner agencies, because of austerity, have retrenched. And we know that there are certain areas which still are significantly underreported. So you saw the tragic tale of Cranleigh there, but we know there's still child sex exploitation being carried out that we aren't aware of. We know areas such as hate crime and hate crime against particular communities remain significantly underreported. And we know that the exploitation of the internet is likely to continue again. So the pressure will continue, and the world in which the officers, the PCSOs and the staff are operating will continue to become more and more complex. That said, in the last 5-10 years of policing, we've made massive strides. And the way we go about now supporting vulnerable people is light years ahead from what it was even 5 years ago. And I have every confidence that as these new challenges present themselves, we'll meet those challenges head on. If we now turn to strengthening local policing, we know local policing really matters. And for us, it's the bedrock of our policing model. Avon and Somerset is a very diverse, large geographic area. And we know that one size doesn't fit all. So our neighbourhood policing offer is very much built around the needs and the expectations of the local community. and we recognise your needs and expectations will be different to perhaps communities in Bristol. So thanks to your support with the precept increase, thanks to Sue's clear direction that neighbourhood policing is really important to local communities, I'm really excited because in a couple of weeks' time we launch our new neighbourhood offer. What does that mean? What that means is that you will have your local team strengthened further. So you've heard about the recruitment, the large-scale recruitment that's taking place of PCs, PCSOs, people working in our communication centre, special constabulary and so on. Those new members of staff will filter through and be within your local community, and they will work side by side with the good people that you see here tonight. But there's more. So we want to get those people out and about in the community. So you see them, you can engage with them, you get to know them, and you feel reassured that those people are there for you. And so therefore, this area, Bridgwater, is one of the very early areas where we're going to roll out the laptops, building on the rollout of the phones that have already taken place. So those officers can be out and about in the community where you want to see them. And I think it's only this week, Lisa, that we've gone live with that.
We've got people out there now.
So, you know, that's a real step change in terms of getting the people out and about in the community. There's other really good initiatives taking place in support of our neighbourhood offer. So we've changed our shift patterns. And the idea behind that is to try and corral or brigade more officers, more PCSOs at times of peak demand or where they want to do particular initiatives, for example, to combat antisocial behaviour. We're also trying to make the best of the internet and embrace social media. So we're encouraging our officers to connect with communities as the rest of society does through Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. Bridgwater is also going to be one of those areas that embrace the concept of PCSOs and PCs being out and about on bikes. Back to the future, if you like. Some people may remember that the Bobby always was on a bike. But as of November, we've invested heavily in bikes and trying to get our staff out and about in the community. And the reason Bridgwater has been selected for a number of these things is because of the passion and the commitment of the leaders of your local policing team. At the risk of embarrassment, Lisa and Andy are really passionate, and therefore they put the hand up and they're really committed to trying new things. So the reason the officers are getting the laptops, the reason the PCSOs are out and about on the bikes, is because your local policing team want to be out and about in your community. The other exciting thing that's happening, which is directly connected to neighbourhood policing, is what we call citizens in policing. Now, Sue touched upon this, but in short, it's about members of the community being exposed to and being informed about policing, and then hopefully seeing us in a positive light and coming forward to help us. There's a long established saying, the police are the public are the police. There is no better illustration of that coming to life than if you can come forward as a volunteer, or perhaps somebody you know could come forward as a member of the Special Constabulary, or perhaps a young person that you know could step forward as a cadet. And we have got limitless opportunities for that. We are crying out for people to help us in whatever capacity you're comfortable with. Now, there's a first step to that, and we open ourselves up through things like the Citizens Academy, which again is taking place at Bridgwater, through a thing called the Ride Along Scheme, which gives you an insight into policing, and all the other groups that Sue touched upon that support the PCC. So my plea would be, please, if you've got an interest in policing, you've got an interest in community safety, or you know somebody that has, please step forward, because we have those opportunities and we really want to embrace the public working alongside us. So I've touched upon there priorities 1 and priority 2 of the police and crime plan. And what I would say on that is that in both of those areas, they are challenging but very exciting times. We are clear about what our role is, we're clear about what our mission is, but we can only do that with your support. And that's why it's important that we come to events such as this, explain what we're doing, and more importantly, listen to how you see local policing and what concerns or observations or ideas you have. So I'll be really interested to hear what you have to say as the evening unfolds. So thank you very much.
The disadvantage of going last is that quite a lot of what I was going to say has just been touched on, but hopefully I'll give a very local feel to some of that as well. I feel very privileged. My name is Lisa Simpson. I'm here as the local policing area commander, which is a very grand title, but basically my role as being the leader for the neighbourhood teams in Somerset West, which is actually extremely broad, and I'll come on to talk about that. But my privilege is that I live in this community. I've worked in this community for half of my 22 years service now. It's a fantastic community to be in. But more that I have got, as the ACC said, an extremely professional and dedicated team. The most that I have, the best team I've worked with in the 22 years that I've served. They genuinely care about doing what is right for you. And this event tonight will help inform us what we're getting right and where we're perhaps not hitting the mark. And believe you and me, the team that you've got here will want to make that better if that's the case. I couldn't bring all of them, I'd love to, but I think you probably would have questioned if I'd brought all 100 members of the team-ish into the room tonight. But I have brought a select and welcome few, and they will be available at the end to discuss any particular issues and get to know you a bit better. So I will talk about them in a moment. I think I should just really start by saying you live in one of the safest places in the country. It is diverse. I'll come on to talk about the actual area. Probably need to go back one, if that's okay, thank you. But it is safe and we are privileged, but we're not complacent. And I'll come on also to tell you what we're going to do. I've only got 10 minutes and I'm going to canter through a little bit about the area, a little bit about the team, how you can contact them, and how you can see what they're up to and influence what they're up to. And then finally, and most importantly and excitingly, what we're going to do from the 1st of October, which we're one of 8 local policing areas within the constabulary. We're the only one to be doing it in the way that I'm going to describe because of the dedication of the team that you've got and the way that they work with their partnerships. And I know that we've got some partners here tonight. We have got a really honed partnership working, as Sue touched on right at the beginning. So conscious we're here in Sedgemoor, thank you for having us. But my area is actually one of the largest in the constabulary, 660 square miles, and it has quite complex local authority structure, as you all know. So I've actually got at the moment 3, soon to be 2 local authority areas in my jurisdiction, West Somerset, Taunton, Deane and Sedgemoor. Within the 660 square miles, I've got around about 150 parish councils or equivalent. We've got some of the worst deprivation in the country in small pockets, and we've got some of the most extreme wealth as well. So it's diverse from that perspective. We've got about a 2.5% minority ethnic community situation, so we're quite low on numbers, which means the challenge is to reach out to those communities is even harder because they are smaller voices in a large area, and we're always looking at ways to improve that again, which I'll come on to at the end. And we've got a large populace of retired people spread over a large area, often rural communities, again difficult to reach, with some difficulties in terms of getting the communication right for that group as well. So that's the area. What I wanted to be clear about is what the neighbourhoods do, and many of you will know it, but I think it's worth pointing out in the context of the austerity that we've had and the police officer numbers. My team consists of 2 inspectors that are broadly local authority aligned at the moment, and I'll tell you how that's changing very soon. They, underneath them, have got 6, usually 6, there's 7 at the moment, but 6 sergeants across the board. And then the sergeants are responsible for 35 beat managers and around about 58 PCSOs. Those are the posts on paper. They're not all filled posts, and indeed some of them might be double posts if we've got part-time officers in them. So the picture hasn't been as rosy as that, but at maximum, those are the numbers I've got. And that is for the whole neighbourhood offer. And the neighbourhood part of policing the bedrock is the best example I can give. It's all about the listening to the communities, the understanding what's making their quality of life difficult, protecting the vulnerable and making sure people don't come to harm. It's not necessarily the tearing about and arresting the bad and locking them up and getting to those really serious jobs, although we do that too. This is about the partnership working both internally and, really importantly and successfully, in Sedgemoor, Taunton, Deane and West Somerset, the partnership working with our statutory partners, fire, health, local authorities, and our third sector supporters as well, charities and the over 30 that we work with in this area. But the internal partnerships that we have, we're in the Neighbourhood Directorate, but there's other directorates as well, the traditional CID as you would know them, we call them the Investigations Directorate, and probably the most important or the most noticeable part of policing being the Response Directorate, who are there when you call 999 and respond to the jobs where life or property is at risk predominantly, although they do an awful lot of other work as well. But in forming those relationships, at any one time, I thought it might be worthwhile you having a view of how many police officers are on in your area. So do any of you know, on an early shift, which is 7 a.m. until about, let's just say 4 p.m, a late shift is about the afternoon through to the late evening, and then night shift all the way through the night. In any one shift, how many in this area, police officers, do you think that you've got available to you?
Two.
No, we're not just talking about my neighbourhood offer, we're talking about all of the police officers. It is better than that, that's good. Better than 2?
Still not enough.
No.
No, see the bats have got 10 on duty, but one died. You've got to be a lot less.
Yeah, 20's more like it. So there's about 15 or 16 response officers on duty. There'll be about anything from 5 to 10 neighbourhood officers, and then there'll be all the central functions that the constabulary can offer. So the officers that are investigating serious crime, the officers that carry guns, the officers that do searches, all the comm staff that help get the call directed, all the special constables that help us. So there'll be central resources, but they don't add great numbers at any one time. So you're talking about 20, 25 officers in your local area at any time dealing with what you need when you urgently need it and what you need in terms of problem solving. And my team are in that group of people that are there behind the scenes, problem solving and getting to the root of what might cause problems in the future and preventing that from happening. And without doubt, the most important role of all, protecting the vulnerable people. We saw the Cranleigh story, but there's vulnerability in every walk of life, in every area, that we're trying to make sure that we root out and improve and protect. So let's move on to, if you don't mind, thank you. Here's the team. So some of them in the room tonight. So at the moment, it's laid out on here in a way which I'll come back to at the end to show you what we're doing in the future. But those are the names and the faces of your management team, if you like. So Andy Pritchard is very much aligned to Sedgemoor at the moment. Neil Dillon, who can't be here tonight because he's on holiday, so we'll forgive him, is aligned to Taunton, Deane and West Somerset. And they've got so Joe Piscina, Jen Atkinson, Charmaine Dine, Stuart Williams, Ryan Edwards, Andy Bloyne and Dan Bishop doing a fantastic job in leading those teams of PCs and PCSOs in very specific geographic beat areas aligned to the local authority in which they sit. Back on to the next slide. Thanks. I don't know if you're going to be able to see the detail of that, and by all means at the end we'll put it back up and we'll expand it so you can see. But there's really, I'm referring to my notes, not because I don't know what to say, but I'm just really worried I'll go off on a tangent because I could talk all day about what they're doing and I want to really make sure I get the best thing in 10 minutes as I can give you. But there's 2 good ways at the moment where you can actually go online and see what your teams are up to locally, very locally. So if you actually log on to even somerset.police.uk, your area, put in your town or your village or your postcode, you'll get up at the moment who your sergeant is, who your PCs are, who your PCSOs are, also what's going on in your area that might be relevant for you to attend. And as you'd see up there, if you could read it, you'll see that this event is on there because we've got the Bridgwater Town Centre as an example with Jen up there and Dom and Adam, and there'll be more underneath, but it's just cut it off. It will also show you, most importantly, policing priorities for the area. I wanted to help you understand how at the moment we set the priorities and how you're part of it. So there's all sorts of meetings that happen in a fortnightly period. some with external partners and some not, and they all inform each other. So if we look at a multi-agency partnership meeting which happens in this area once a week, chaired by Andy and attended by all the tacticians from the, or should be attended by all the tacticians at the various other partnerships. So we'll get somebody from fire, from housing, from some of the charity organisations that support people that might be suffering from discrimination. Lots and lots of different people that are front end dealing with the families and the people that have needed their service. That's then coordinated by Andy to work out where can we bring extra service as a partnership, internally and externally, to make sure that we improve, protect, prevent. An example of that meeting is only one example. There are other meetings, the Together teams, the One teams, where we're actually out on the ground with other different groups that are dealing with other different families. So we get a picture of what's happening, all being well, from all corners of that large area. And the reason that we're going to be able to trial something different in 2 weeks' time is because that model is really honed. We are really getting into the communities that we need to. That information then goes into a policing priorities meeting, which I chair once every fortnight. It's on a Wednesday. We've done it today, where the top level issues from all those different meetings will be discussed. We will work out with the resources we've got, which I illustrated to you a few moments ago, where can we best put those resources, so that we can make an impact on the things that we think from our intelligence, our analysis, our crime types are hurting you, but also from where those meetings have informed that your communities are being hurt or vulnerable or susceptible to antisocial behaviour or crime or whatever it is. And then we split up the teams, we work out in their beat areas who's going to own those plans, usually owned by a sergeant and a beat manager, and off we go for a fortnight and deliver what we need to deliver. If we need extra help, if we're doing warrants, or we've got a really significant problem that we need more PCs to help us with. And the example I'll give you is massive ASB in Wellington over the summer, really disruptive to that community, 9 or 10 young offenders basically running amok and causing pain to that community. We couldn't deal with that on our own. We didn't have enough police officers out in Wellington to do that in this team, and we couldn't rely on the response teams in that more remote area to always be there in volume. So we called upon some of the central resources, and sure enough we're able to get those on a bid process to come and help us. So we're able to target it on what the communities are telling us, what the patterns show us, what we hear from other people, and feed that information so every fortnight we're doing something that we think we've got all the information is the thing that is the most important. And that will show on this page as well. So where it's got events at the top, saying about the meetings where you can go, inform, meet, discuss, underneath it's got the priorities, which will say what we're doing, why we're doing it. Some might have been on there for ages because we're just refeeding it every week because it's a continual problem. Some might be brand new. All that will be improving as we go on because we've got more used to the technology. They've got laptops, they're rolling it out, and they'll be out there doing it on a daily basis. And the other place, I don't Twitter, I don't tweet even. See, I can't even use the lingo. I'm not a tweeter, but Twitter is really important to us at the moment. We've launched it, we've got thousands of followers. You can come on, and you can see that on here is a picture of Claire Allen, who's not here tonight, but she's pitched up on her beat, got her laptop out on the outside part, sent a tweet, I'm here, come and see me. Now, it doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone wants to use that medium, but it is reaching an audience that we didn't reach before. It is showing you, as a general community, where you can look to see what we're doing and tell us that we're getting it right and tell us where we're not getting it right, more importantly, so that we can improve. So on to the improvements, as I promised I'd tell you, which are exciting. Lovely Rob Brown over there, smiling with his new laptop, which was that last week? This week, Joe, Andy, this week. So this is fresh, hot off the press. The reason we've got a bike up there and a laptop with a smiling officer, the main reason that we needed to change in all the context that you've just heard from Sue and the ACC is that we need to get the engagement and the visibility bang on. Because if we're out there and you can see us and you're going to talk to us, we're going to learn a lot about the things that you need us to help you with. There isn't any other key role for our PCSOs than that. And the slippage in the austere times has been that our PCSOs have morphed into doing the roles that our sworn beat officers have always been able to do because they've got the powers of arrest, the powers of entering, the powers of detaining somebody. And all of a sudden we've had to use PCSOs to sort of come and support them to do that more often over 7 years. And I'm watering this down and oversimplifying it, but the bottom line is PCSOs were brought in order to engage with you as a community, to come out there, to understand what's important to you and to feed it back into us. And somehow we've slipped with it. Our new model in Somerset West is going to put that right. We really hope it's going to put that right. We're really keen to put it right. And they're going to be, all the PCSOs are going to be issued with personal issue bikes and their own personal issue bike kit. So they've got all the kit and all the equipment to be at all times out there on patrol in a way which means you can stop and you can engage with them in their area, on their beat. We've brought a bike with us. I know you've probably all seen the bike before, but we've brought a model of what we're going to be on to show you can see how it's kitted up. We bought the kit that they're going to wear, and it's downstairs for you to have a look at, ask questions about afterwards if you're interested at all. And the other key part of this model is that the laptops are allowing us to be out and about. So they'll be out on their bikes, they'll have their laptops with them. We won't see them in the station. They'll come in, get their kit on a daily basis, and the hope is they'll be out and they'll be gone. They'll be in the hubs that are available now, and we're hoping to extend our hubs into more schools, more cafes. But they'll be everywhere, is the hope, where you can meet them and they can report. We're putting them back to do what they should have always been doing, and which we've slipped on. And with the PCs, so if we could just go back to the other page, okay? So, next one. So where we said if you put on your town or your village at the moment, you get that linear of your sergeant, your beat manager who owns the beat and all the responsibilities, and the PCSOs who have slipped into being almost subservient to serve the beat managers in what they're doing. We're putting that straight as well. You won't see that anymore. You'll see the sergeant, and then you'll see the beat ownership as the PCSOs, because they do own the beat. I live in a really rural community in West Somerset, and all the community know the names of their PCSOs. They know them as a face of policing. All the kids in the school know their names. The pub owner knows them. The shop owner knows them. They are out there in the community all the time. With all the best will in the world, and there's some great beat managers out there, they can't be everywhere over 300 square miles that Exmoor and alike covers. So we're just putting that into a bit more context. The teams will show as the sergeant and the PCSOs and what their priorities are around that specific beat. The beat managers won't appear on there because they're no longer going to own a beat. But what they are going to own is the responsibility of the policing priorities in Somerset West. And they will be an agile group of officers that will be hub-based in the 3 local authority areas, a hub base in Willerton, a hub base at Express Park, and a hub base in the Taunton Dean Police Centre, which is literally being finished now. They will be there in bigger groups, en masse, doing slightly different shifts, which mean we've got more deployable staff to actually say, in those priorities meetings, where do the communities of Somerset West need us to hit hard or to be in a proactive role to go and prevent antisocial behaviour? Whatever the problem is, we'll have a pool of police officers that we can move around to the problem rather than the situation we have now, whereas if they're on their beat and they're dealing with their beat work, if they're on a rest day, or 4 rest days as we have in the pattern at the moment, that beat work would be managed if it was critical by other people, but that ownership and that continuity is lost. This way we've got police officers that will always go to the most critical issues across the whole area in a way that's informed by you through priority setting, and in a way where we can actually do something meaningful about the issues there and then, without necessarily relying on our central colleagues, of which we have to go into a bidding process for and don't necessarily always get. So that is a canter through, genuinely it is. There's loads more I could tell you about it. There's loads more that you're going to see. What we really need from you in these following weeks, we've sent out a survey to the parish council chairs of all the 150 areas to say, we want you to tell us now how visible we are. And quite frankly, I've not been surprised at some of the results I've seen, which are woeful. We want to measure that again in 6 months' time and in 12 months' time to say, are you seeing us even more? We really want your help. When we're out there on bikes, when you see us in the hubs, when you see us in the park, please go and talk to us. Please go and tell us what you want. Please go and tell us what we're not giving you and help us form that model so that by the end of the year we've got something meaningful that was improved by the feedback you gave us. And the final thing I'll say, and a lot of it's been touched on already, is what's critical to success is you. You don't have to be an active volunteer in one of those frontline roles, although you'd always be welcome. The Special Constabulary, of course, is the most obvious one, but we've got community speed watch in most communities, we've got neighbourhood watch in most communities. They're very, very valuable. In this new model, the PCSOs will be working more closely with them because they'll be there on their bike cycling to the addresses to go and see what's going on. We've got the Independent Advisory Group. I mentioned about our very hard to reach 2.5% quiet voices in our area. We've got a passionate chair. He would have been here tonight, but again, he's the other side of the world, and again, we'll forgive him. A passionate chair that represents the rural communities, but he's got a small but really helpful and supportive team behind him that represent the Jewish community. We've got somebody that represents violence against women and violence against men. We've got a youth representative, we've got somebody that is a specialist in mental health. So we've got some touchdowns with some minority communities, but there's a broader representation that we need. So if you think you could help or add value, or you know somebody that could, please ask them to join. They are our critical friend. We meet once every other month, I'm sorry. And although we're on the panel, it's not our meeting, so they help tell us what their communities want us to do better. We tell them when there's been a community event that's been impactful, so they can help us deal with the community to reassure them in a way that's appropriate to that community. It's really important work. And there are other areas. We talked about the Citizens Academy, which starts on the 7th of October. We've got leaflets with us here. Please talk to some of the team about it, especially if you've had a negative experience or you know somebody that has, because I think that there's a chance that you could have your faith restored and see what some of the challenges are and actually help shape how we might improve them. That's not an exhaustive list of how you might help us. It's probably all I've got time to tell you about now, and I am going to now shut up and sit down and allow you a chance to talk to us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. That's obviously some very exciting times that are going to happen in this patch, and certainly some great innovation that I wasn't aware of, so that sounds great. Right, now it's time for you to ask questions. So,
How often do you patrol around Cranleigh Gardens and places like that to cut out the drug taking? Because there was something on Facebook where somebody went to start a 13-year-old football team and they couldn't play because they had to clear all the needles up, and they had 2 bags of rubbish with the needles. How often do you patrol around them sort of places?
So, thank you for that, and I recognise Cranleigh Gardens is somewhere where we need to spend more time than we are, and we recognise there's some antisocial behaviour. They're of all different types, both drinking, potential drug taking and or dealing, urinating. We've had quite a few complaints. Well, we did do some research in preparation for the meeting tonight, and actually there are something like 44 calls to Cranleigh Gardens in the last 12 months, not all relating to the antisocial behaviour, I should add. There are other incidents around the housing there as well. It's very much a partnership approach though. The gardens, and we're getting an awful lot of help from our community safety officer within Sedgemoor District Council. We have got powers that we can use, and we're going to start that are new. So we've got public spaces protection orders that are actually managed and actioned by the local authority, but we have the powers to. It's basically like it's issuing a speeding ticket, really. It's a ticket for inappropriate behaviour where we can move people on, and if they refuse to go, they get a ticket and a fine. This is really new legislation. It's rolling out, sort of leading the way in Sedgemoor, so we're hopeful that we can use that sort of proactive reaction into Cranleigh Gardens. The team are very well aware of it. When I talked about the priorities earlier, it's come up on our priority setting process, which means it gets a bulk of the town centre team in there. There is more we can do. We've been hindered by some staffing restrictions in the town centre, which we've made no secret of. We haven't got the full complement of beat managers in there. The ones we have got are doing a sterling job, but they are challenged with numbers. So with the uplift in staff, we should be back to full numbers into November at the latest. And as I described that new model, I envisage that by October, we will be able to put numbers in on the right times, where we've been told that it's the hot times, if you like, to be quite zero tolerant of the repeat offenders, and in line with our local authority powers as well, we should be able to target it even better than we've been doing.
Thank you.
Could I say something in relation to that? Hi, I don't know anything about the Cranleigh Gardens issue, but I do know that there's a lot of open spaces where youngsters gather and they leave their rubbish, and I'm just wondering, what can the community, what can we do to work with the police to try and deal with litter? Because I think that very often people who live in the area would like to do something, but they need somebody to get it started, and then if there is a local initiative, then they can get involved and do something without feeling like they're sort of, I don't know, they don't want to get people's backs up, you know, so they want to do it in a way which is kind of organised with the police. So is there a role for local communities to get involved in litter?
That's a really difficult one. I'll take this one. It's a very difficult one for me to answer, because of course general littering isn't a policing priority or responsibility. That's not me saying, do you know what, we're not interested, because of course we are, and all I can suggest is that there are litter picks, there are groups of yous, there are organisations that want to get involved in that sort of thing that we can signpost you to, but littering is very much a district council issue. For things like dog fouling or any serious amount of litter like dumping of furniture, that sort of thing, we would work in partnership to bring prosecutions. But in terms of, and I'm not from one moment saying littering isn't offensive, of course it is. If it's on an antisocial scale, again we would be involved in some sort of problem solving plan, but we wouldn't necessarily lead it for littering. We would encourage and support the community to work together to do something about it, and we would be interested in helping, but we can't do everything anymore, and those things we might have done years ago, we just can't lead on anymore.
So did it used to be a police issue?
And we're talking tens of years ago, your Bobby on the beat on the bicycle probably would deal with the young offenders that they saw littering, probably by cuffing them around the ear and taking them home. So, you know, we did.
PC jurors.
Pardon?
PC jurors.
Yeah. And that's not to say that my officers would ever ignore something that was blatantly antisocial like littering, but it's not. It's a community thing. It's not a police lead thing.
Kate?
Yeah, my question's also related to Cranleigh Gardens, but they're a little bit more specific. What has been done about the drug dealing, particularly by the medical centre and the car park there, and the corner of Cranleigh Gardens and Gordon Terrace? Some time ago, I arrived home around about 6 o'clock after work in the evening, and the smell of cannabis was so strong it actually made me nauseous. Now, this is something that happens frequently. But I actually called 101 and I persevered until I actually spoke to a person. And I said to them about the issue, and they didn't take my report seriously. They were very offhand, and I suggested that if a local policeman walked around the area, and I gave him numbers of houses, that he would smell it for himself and he would see this drug dealing that we see on a daily basis, particularly in the car park, around by the hedges and down by Gordon Terrace. I gave them my name, my contact details, and needless to say, nobody got in touch with me. The other issue, which has become worse over the last couple of years, is the drinking in Cranleigh Gardens. Now, most of it is carried out, and it's not always at the times when you think it would be busiest. Most of it is carried out on the park benches by Eastern Europeans. 3 times a week I leave home at 10 to 6 in the morning to go to the local swim. They will be there then at 6 o'clock in the morning drinking, whether they've been there all night or whether they've just finished a night shift. They leave their rubbish, their tins, their smashed bottles on the ground. If they want a public convenience, they use the tree. Now, recently I returned home again from work and I went upstairs and I had my front windows overlook Cranleigh Gardens and I'm the end towards the children's playground. I mean, you've talked about grooming and about vulnerable people. Well, this is a prime target for anyone that is of that mind. There was a young gentleman, well, he wasn't a young gentleman actually, there was a gentleman sat on the bench and he was probably, the bench he was sat on to the children's play area, which was about 6 o'clock on a Friday night in the summer, which was full of young children, mums with babes, children with older siblings, was no further away than I am to you. As I walked into my bedroom and I just looked into the park, it was a lovely evening, lots of families, lots of children. He stood up, he staggered, he was clearly intoxicated. He then started to undo his trousers. This is as far away from children playing as you are to me, and he went to the tree and he urinated. Now, my first reaction was to go out and speak to him, but bearing in mind I would probably ended up getting assaulted for it, I decided against that and I called 999. And then somebody did attend, and he couldn't understand the police. I watched from the window as the officer that attended had to point to his police written on his back. Now, it's supposed to be a no drinking area. We came out this evening to come here, and there were 3 or 4 Polish people, very loud, drinking. They've been there since early afternoon. If you go out in the night time, it is the same. Through the summer, all night long. They're loud, they're obnoxious, they smash their bottles, And this is an area where children play, where people walk dogs, but it's old people. I've got an elderly neighbour who won't open the door after dark, and she has to wear earplugs at night. She's frightened of an area that she's lived in for over 35 years. Now, I've spoken to police about this, and I've tried to actually get someone to come and speak to me, and nobody wants to know. And you say about contacting you, about becoming more involved. When we are involved, nothing happens.
Okay, so there's an awful lot of points. The first thing to say is I'm genuinely really sorry that your experience with us has been less than satisfactory, to say the least, and we would want to put that right, and obviously we'll do that offline outside of here. We are really intent on sorting out, and Cranleigh Gardens isn't necessarily the only example we've got in the Sedgemoor area, indeed the wider Somerset West area, where we've got open space drinking and the associated ASB that goes along with it, and we do need to focus on it. We haven't necessarily been able to deal with it as robustly as we wanted to, but I can promise you that your comments tonight will be researched. And Jen, can I see Jen? Is Jen there? Yeah. So Jen Atkins at the moment is in charge of that area. She's here tonight. She's not going to leave until you two have spoken afterwards. And indeed, Joe Pacina's behind as well, who is also working in that area. They will make sure that we've noted down where we failed you, so that we can try and get the learning right and put that right. And what it is in Cranleigh Gardens, the times, the dates that I'm hoping that we'll know about a lot of it, and we've not necessarily been as robust as we can be, and we're going to put that right. But it'd be useful to make sure we've got all the information you're able to give in order that we can really analyse what's going on there, deal hard with the local authority to make sure that we're issuing the PSPOs to the right people, and to make it very clear to those communities that they are not going to make the lives of those residents as unhappy as they are doing.
But what is your view on people's, I mean, it is an area where they're not supposed to drink outside in public, and it happens 24 hours a day, and it is, I think, I would say probably 99% Eastern European. I'm sure if it was a 20-year-old young local lad that was having a drink and getting a bit rowdy, his drink would be taken off him, and he'd be said, you can't do that here. I'm not aware that ever happens with any of the Eastern Europeans that are there. And I don't want to sound racist, because I am not. I have very good friends that are Polish and Lithuanian. It is the behaviour that is not acceptable, and if it's acceptable in their own countries, that's fine. They're living in our country, they should follow our laws, and they should be made to follow our laws.
So, as much as I don't for one moment think that you're being discriminatory, I'm grateful for your honesty. I would also say, with my hand on my heart, none of our officers are discriminatory either. So if they see drink, it is boundaryless. If it's drinking and it's offensive and it's ASB, it doesn't matter from where they come. They'll be dealt with in the same robust way. And it sounds like we've still got some more robust work to do. Don't at all believe that because of their language barrier we won't deal with it robustly, because we will. And we've got access to interpreters to make sure that we make it very clear to them, and all that sort of thing that goes on. But it isn't just that issue in isolation. There's obviously work we've got to do to make Cranleigh Gardens difficult for people to behave like that, and there's all sorts of work we can do around enhancing what the gardens actually look like, enhancing CCTV, and enhancing how much we go in there. Also looking at the licensed premises surrounding there. It's a whole partnership approach, because actually who's selling drink to drunk people. And believe you and me, we do that work. We've shut down off licences that have been contributing to the town with great success in Bridgwater, actually. Shut down licences where they've contributed to the people that have been really antisocial in the centre of the town. It sounds like we're still missing a trick. My guarantee is that we'll put it right.
You only have to see the rubbish that's left behind to see that it is not English drink, it is foreign brands. So that will give you a clue as to where it's coming from.
That is helpful.
What you have to remember, which what concerns me most, is that this all goes on just 20 yards from where young children are playing, and grown men stand there drunk and urinate in front of small children.
No, I'm totally on it. The team will make sure that we know exactly what it is in the detail, either tonight from you or an appointment at your convenience thereafter.
Okay, thank you. This gentleman in the red.
Good evening. I've listened to the three of you tonight, and I've been astounded. I almost believed you. We're cuckoos in the nest here tonight, because we've come from Taunton, or as it's becoming known as Dodge City. It's so unruly, it's unbelievable. It's known that if you see one police car in 24 hours, more than one police car, there must be a major incident. We're victims of antisocial behaviour involving threats, and it's going to lead to violence. We've been involved with the local police team, and I have to say they are useless. Absolutely. The PCSO is fine. He's doing his best. But like he says, he has no authority. He cannot do anything. He has to go back to his beat manager. The beat manager is never on duty. You cannot speak to a beat manager. You cannot. So you can email him, and you might get an email back 4 or 5 days later. The first beat manager didn't deal with the incident properly. This has been going on, as I say, for nearly 3 years. We were called down to Taunton Police Station the early part of this year, I think it was, because they were reviewing the files and they saw that our file hadn't been dealt with. We went in, we saw an officer that was due to retire. He was excellent. He looked at the CCTV, because we've had to put cameras up, we've had to put security lights. He looked at all the CCTV. I had a brand new motor car, £40,000 motor car. And this idiot is jumping over my car on my drive. That's the sort of thing. The officer that we saw at Taunton Police Station could not believe what he was looking at. He couldn't believe the language that was being used. He promised us the new beat manager was the go-to guy. He would deal with him. We've spoken to him twice. He's never there. We've got 3 independent people prepared to give witness statements. The police have not gone to them for witness statements. They've been saying, we've got a statement, we've written it out. Oh, we'll collect it later. They've never, ever gone there. We've spoken last week to the PCSO that's been dealing with the case. He is so embarrassed that he can't do anymore. We told him that we were making the effort to come over here today because we heard that the Commissioner was here and we heard that the Police Constable was here, the Chief Constable was here. He was a bit worried, quite rightly. He said, because what are you going to say? I said, well, I'm going to say that you are useless. You asked for community support. My wife and I'm 74. I have cancer, I have heart trouble. This incident's put me in hospital twice. And this PCSO, he's done everything in his power. But the best that the people committing the offences had was they'd been put on the naughty step for 5 minutes. We were told that the next offence they would be arrested. It's still going on. So, as far as you promise us this and you promise us that, it doesn't happen. When you get to the ground and you get to our level, you're anonymous. All we know is we see you two on the television. That's as far as we get. Because we don't see police officers. We've had an incident where idiots turned cars over in the middle of town quite recently. Within a mile and a half of where we live in quite a good area. There's been plus 15 cars had the tyres slashed on Monday night. The area just the other side of that, another good area. There's like gangs of young boys and girls walking around abusing the householders and ripping mirrors off cars. We've got speeding every single night in an area where a young girl was killed a few years ago, and there's a memorial up to her. Where are the police? We keep saying, help us. Tell us what you want from us. We will come along and help you. And we get that big thing from the police, silence. Because, oh, well, we're limited. The world's limited. But we rely on you, and you're not there. So, for all your good intentions tonight, thank you very much for that, because I almost got enthusiastic.
Okay. I mean, the first thing I would say is, I'm very sorry to hear about your health problems. And I'm very sorry to hear...
Sort out my other problems.
I'm very sorry to hear about the experiences you've had. I take on board some of the more positive things you've said about the PCSO and the officer who's due to retire. My promise to you is that the incidents that you've described, we'll have a conversation after this meeting, and I will make sure that the beat manager and the local sergeant are right on top of that, communicate with you and try and take it forward. Okay? I use the word try because I live in the real world and policing is only part of the solution here. Of course we've got a responsibility, of course it's our primary responsibility, but as you've already heard, we have to work with partners to try and come up with something that's sustainable, because otherwise if we just keep enforcing and it continues, you just get that vicious cycle going on. So we'll ask the local sergeant, the local beat manager to review where we are, communicate with you and make the situation better for you.
Thank you. But as I'll just say to you, that as I said to your PCSO, Somerset and Avon have had 2 bad incidents in Bristol where people have been bullied and the end result has been bad. I would have thought that took these sort of incidents very, very serious, but obviously not.
Yeah.
So I would hope that you can put something right.
Just on the point of visibility, and of course it's important, and we've already discussed all the efforts that we're making to make sure that your local officers are seen within the community. But please don't assume, because you're not seeing officers, that important work is not carried out. Much of our work now takes place behind the scenes, particularly about drugs dealing. Much of our work is online or indoors, and it's important work that may not necessarily be directly visible to the public, but it is going on, and it is going on to protect the public.
Could I ask you one question on that, then I'll finish, so somebody else can help. I understand what you've just said about the online and in the office and all this. How does that help confidence in the residents, in the local community? Because it's always been the visibility of the police has been the confidence issue. It's always been the visibility of the police that's kept the little person that thought, oh, I'll just go and do that. Oh, okay, Bobby's coming down the road. It's always been that. So while you're hiding them away in offices, how does all that help the community?
I mean, you make a very good point, and the whole point of police officers not being in stations is absolutely key. But we also have to recognise that we have a central government where the funds have been dropping every year. We have 25% less money, we have 655 fewer officers. Now, I'm not being defensive, I'm just saying those are the facts of the matter. The Assistant Chief Constable said that he will get someone to be able to take on the issues that you have raised. And I'd like to add my apology as well, because you shouldn't have to come to a public meeting like this in order to share this with you. So it will be looked at. Okay, thank you. This gentleman. Oh, sorry.
Can I just add just two points? So, firstly, and we obviously knew you were coming from your attendance list. We knew you were coming from the attendance list. We knew that you had genuine concerns about the way that which we were handling or not handling your case. The sergeant responsible for your area is in the room. He sat right in front of you. It's Dan Bishop. He will be really, really pleased to meet with you, and in line with the promises made, will resolve some of these issues that you rightly raised. And the other point that you said about the very unfortunate and sad cases in Bristol, the job that I had before I came back to Somerset West was indeed unpicking the saddest case of the death of Bijan Ibrahimi and all the forced learning from that. So in terms of my teams being able to do the best job they can, and I appreciate that you haven't had the service that you deserve,